Dear friends, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Tonight we have a very, very special evening. It's about Abdu'l-Baha's trips in the United States, and who better than Dr. Robert Stockman to talk about it? Uh, Dr. Robert Stockman has sent me a very, very short bio. And I would read that, but that doesn't mean that I didn't have 5 more pages to add to it. Uh, he is the author of 4 books of Baha'i history, one introductory, a textbook, and the faith, a booklet about the Baha'i faith and nonviolence. He also has various articles on Baha'i history and theology. He also edited The World of the Baha'i Faith, a 51-chapter survey of the Baha'i published by Routledge. He was the director of the Wilmette Institute, and he's currently the director of the Corinne True Center for Bahá'í History. He's an instructor of religious studies in Indiana University, South Bend, and I think I have missed a few lines. I know that his PhD was from. Help me! I apologize, Rob. His PhD is from
Harvard
University. Yes.
University.
Yeah, I thank you so much for accepting to be with us. We start with 2 prayers and then we will continue. Thank you.
For East, I will say a pray, Our Father, em português. Pai nosso que estás no céu, santificado seja o teu nome. Venha a nós o vosso reino, seja feita a vossa vontade, assim na terra como no céu. O pão nosso de cada dia nos dai hoje. Não nos deixeis cair em tentação, mas livrai-nos do mal. Amém.
O thou peerless and loving Lord, though capacity and worthiness are lacking, and it is infinitely hard to withstand tribulations, yet worthiness and capacity are gifts vouchsafed by thee. O Lord, give us capacity and make us worthy, that we may evince the most great steadfastness, renounce this world and all its people, kindle the fire of thy love, and even as candles burn bright with a consuming flame, and shed abroad our radiance. O Lord of the kingdom, deliver us from this world of vain illusions, and lead us unto the realm of the infinite. Suffer us to be wholly freed from this nether life, and cause us to be blessed with the bountiful gifts of the kingdom. Release us from this world of nothingness that beareth the semblance of reality, and confer upon us life everlasting. Bestow on us joy and delight, and favor us with gladness and contentment. Comfort our hearts, and grant peace and tranquility to our souls, so that upon ascending unto thy kingdom we may attain thy presence, and may rejoice in the realms above. Thou art the giver, the bestower, the Almighty. Abdu'l-Baha.
Thank you, everyone. Dr. Stockman, please go ahead.
Can I share my screen?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Let me do that. Adjust this a bit, perhaps, too.
I just made you a co-host.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, let me see. Share. Number 3. Okay. Oops. That's not the right screen. This is the right screen here. Can you see it?
Perfect.
You can see it. Okay, good. Well, I was asked to talk about Abdu'l-Baha's visit to the United States. And what I've got here is a slideshow that I put together actually some time ago. I don't think I've ever shared it with this particular audience, about Abdu'l-Baha's visit to North America and what we can learn from it. We have here, of course, Abdu'l-Baha under the Eiffel Tower, which is not North America, but it's a nice, pretty picture. And of course, a picture of Abdu'l-Baha himself next to it so that you can see him. I think probably just about everyone is a Baha'i, but many people don't know much about Abdu'l-Baha. So I should probably add he was born in 1844, the same night that the Bab announced his mission to be the new messenger of God. Abdu'l-Baha was Baha'u'llah's son. Baha'u'llah, of course, accepted the Bab in 1844 and announced himself as a prophet, the new messenger of God in 1863 to a group of his followers. When Baha'u'llah passed away in 1892, his son Abdu'l-Baha became his successor. Baha'u'llah had appointed him as his successor, and that was quite clear in written documents. So Abdu'l-Baha was immediately accepted by 99.9% of the Baha'i community. And there was really no significant opposition to him in the community itself, though some of his brothers gave him some trouble for a while.
Excuse me, Robert.
Yes.
Bob here. Is it possible for you just to make it full screen so we don't see all your slides on the side?
I can try. Sometimes that doesn't work very well. Let me see if I can do it.
Because then we'd see the pictures better.
There we go.
Yeah,
There.
that's good.
That's better. Okay.
That's beautiful.
I see another one over here, which is my second slide. I don't know if you can see the second slide or not.
No, we don't.
Okay, well, that's good. I guess it's a hint for me to know what's coming. So Abdu'l-Baha became head of the faith in 1892. He was in prison by the Turks, and they tightened up his prison largely because American Baha'is began to visit him. He was freed in 1908. He then traveled shortly thereafter to Egypt, to Europe in 1911, back to Egypt, and then he came to North America, arriving in New York in April of 1912, about a week and a half before the Titanic sank, in fact, if you want to tie that to a particular event. So to give you some idea of sort of where he went in North America, he arrived in New York, and his first trip was down to Washington, D.C., and then to Chicago. He then returned to Washington and New York, and spent several months at that point on the East Coast of the United States between Philadelphia and Boston. Most of the time, basically, New York was his headquarters, so he would go down to Philadelphia and come back. He would go up to Boston and come back. He would go over to New Jersey and come back. Then when it got extremely hot and humid, and I should add smoggy, because I think people kept saying that the heat and humidity were really making it very difficult on Abdu'l-Baha, but I think a lot of that had to do with the smoke and air pollution in the city, because as soon as he went to Dublin, New Hampshire, his health improved considerably. But Dublin is not that much less humid than New York City, or not necessarily that much cooler usually. So he went to New Hampshire for most of late July and August. Then he went up to Greenacre Baha'i School in southern Maine, back to Boston for the last time, and then he went to Montreal. So you can see that blue line that goes from Boston up to Montreal. Then from Montreal, he went down, apparently got off the train and walked along the tracks in Toronto for a few minutes, but didn't actually spend any time in Toronto. Went on down to Niagara Falls and Buffalo, and then from there back to Chicago. Then he headed west to Wisconsin, to Nebraska, on to Colorado. From Colorado, he went to San Francisco, and he spent close to a month. I think altogether it was 23 or 24 days in California, mostly in the San Francisco area. Went down to Los Angeles to visit the grave of Thornton Chase, the first American Baha'i, who had passed away on, that was the last day or two of August of was September 30th, I think, when he died. So Abdu'l-Baha got to his grave in mid-October, went back to San Francisco, then headed back east to Denver, Chicago, Washington, on back to New York, and then he left in December of 1912 for England. So he crossed the continent all the way east to west, visited Quebec and Ontario, as well as, I don't know, about 15 or 20 states in the United States, and visited all of the major Baha'i communities in the United States and Canada, possibly with the exception of Seattle and Portland, who were good-sized communities, actually. They came down and visited Abdu'l-Baha in San Francisco because it was just impossible for him to get up there as well. So that gives you an idea of where he went. And, you know, almost all the places he visited, with the sole exception of Salt Lake City. He spent a couple of days in Salt Lake City. There were no Baha'is there. But everywhere else he visited, there was a Baha'i community there who welcomed him, arranged for his talks, arranged for press coverage. And the result was it was a very, very fruitful, productive 8 months in North America. To give you some idea of what he accomplished, first of all, he gave talks all over the place. He spoke in homes. He visited individuals and sometimes in their houses, but he also had individuals in small groups come and meet him wherever he was staying. Abdu'l-Baha, if possible, preferred to rent a house when he was in a city because hotels often would not allow African Americans in, and to avoid any restrictions on who could visit him, he preferred to be in a rented facility if at all possible. And that was very easy in New York and in San Francisco. He rented houses while he was in those places. He stayed in a house one night in, I think it was Denver. He stayed in a house for a couple of days in Boston. Sometimes he had to stay in hotels because there was simply no other accommodation available to him. He met many prominent people. We're not altogether sure about all of them. He may have met with Teddy Roosevelt, but we're not really sure. He may have met with Andrew Carnegie, but we're not sure. So there's a few that we're not able to nail down, but he did spend time with Bell, who developed the telephone. He met Perry, who went to the North Pole, met various senators, Supreme Court justices, ambassadors to the United States, American ambassadors to other countries. Really quite a remarkable visit, a remarkable tour in terms of the people he met and talked to. He didn't just contact prominent people. He visited 7 settlement houses or social service agencies. These are places that take care of the poor, the working class people sometimes. In the case of the Bowery, of course, he visited a soup line and spoke to people who were getting a free meal. So there was, quite a lot that he did with both the wealthy and with the poor. He even visited 2 summer camps while he was in New Hampshire and talked to the kids there. He visited sick people. He went out of his way sometimes to go to their houses. No one has yet compiled all the newspaper articles, but more and more of them, of course, are available online all the time. I'm aware of over 350 newspaper articles about his travels in North America. I count 401 public talks that he gave. That's almost 2 per day. And if you count up how many were in small groups, how many were in houses, how many were in auditoriums, and you make estimates for the size of the audiences, it added up, it's 93,000 people. Of course, that might really be 50,000 people. It might be really 150,000 people. That's just the best guess that I can offer. He was often invited to speak in places of worship. 31 liberal Protestant churches invited him to speak. He spoke to 14 Theosophical and New Thought meetings. You'll note that he did not speak to any conservative Protestant churches. They didn't invite him, of course. He didn't speak in any Catholic churches, and actually did not speak in very many Unitarian churches, even though they're very liberal, which is kind of interesting too. Lots of Methodists and Baptists and Northern Baptists, Presbyterians, Congregationalists, that kind of thing. I don't have it listed here. Maybe it's on the next slide. He spoke in 3 synagogues as well. We have a very thorough record of his talks in California, where he gave 48 formal addresses, spoke to 41 small groups of people, and interviewed or talked individually with 53 people, all in 24 days. And that's probably representative of what he really did in the whole country, because we have a very thorough accounting of California. The Baha'is there paid a Baha'i to spend her time with Abdu'l-Baha from dawn to midnight, and she was a stenographer who took it all down in shorthand. So we have the more thorough record of his trips in California than anywhere else. And that gives you some idea of what we're missing for the rest of the North America. I mentioned the synagogues, 5 universities he spoke at. These were Stanford, Northwestern University, Clark University in Massachusetts, Columbia University, and Howard University in New York, in Washington, D.C. He may have spoken at New York University as well in New York City. We're not really quite sure about that. He attended the 4th annual convention of the NAACP, the National Association of the Advancement of Colored People. He spoke to one African American Literary Society at an AME church, African American Episcopal Church. He also spoke to a gathering of Syrian immigrants to the Boston area. So these were Arabic-speaking people. He spoke to them in Arabic. He also spoke at a Japanese congregational church in Berkeley, California, where he was spoken Persian. He was translated into English, and then he was translated into Japanese. That particular talk apparently eventually got published by a Japanese newspaper in California. So a really remarkable wide range of people. He focused particularly on speaking to African Americans, and when he was in Washington, D.C., where Louis Gregory was able to arrange talks, probably half of his audiences in Washington, D.C. were Black people. This is one way of thinking about what Abdu'l-Baha was seeking to do. He was seeking to move the uninformed public into the ranks of the interested into the ranks of the inquiring into the ranks of the committed into the ranks of the consecrated. So he's trying to pull people towards the center of the faith, towards Baha'u'llah, towards the covenant. And people, if they went a little bit of the ways, that's great. If they went a little farther, that's great. He's constantly trying to move people towards becoming consecrated, dedicated followers of Baha'u'llah. And he did this in love, in humor, paying close attention to the nature of his audience and how deep he could go with them. He had a good sense of that. One particular point when Florence Breed had a bunch of wealthy people over to her house, Abdu'l-Baha sensed that they really weren't interested in the faith, and he just told jokes and was a very pleasant, friendly guest for the evening. And it perhaps might have seemed like that didn't work. Mrs. Breed was not terribly happy about the fact that he didn't talk about the faith more. But one of the people there also heard Abdu'l-Baha speak in other places, and Mrs. Breed complains in a letter to somebody that Mr. Such and Such was always drunk, and she wasn't sure he was really paying attention, and such and such and such. But then 15 or 20 years later, when he's the U.S. ambassador to Japan in like the early 1930s, Martha Root goes to talk to him, and he says, "Oh, I heard Abdu'l-Baha speak in Dublin. What can I do for you?" And he was extremely helpful for her. So that drunkard actually must have listened at least a little bit. So that shows you, the sort of thing that Abdu'l-Baha could do. He often emphasized what we call the Baha'i principles, the 12 principles. At one point, he talked about up to 11 of them. He never talked about 12 all at once. Sometimes he only talked about one. Sometimes he talked about 2 or 3 or 4. It varied depending on his audience. He tended to increase the number of principles he talked about as he crossed North America, near as I can tell. I don't know why that is, because he talked about all 12 or 13 or 14 of them in Paris earlier. So it's not like he was inventing his talk as he went, because when he was in Paris in 1911, he talked about the 12 principles one at a time, and then talked about, the whole group of them later on. He tended to start by talking about the oneness of humanity, and investigation of reality. And these two principles are really, in a sense, the same thing, because Baha'u'llah says in one particular passage that he says the first gift that God has given human beings is the gift of understanding. So in other words, this primary gift of ours is this ability to investigate, to study. This is the nature of human beings, that we can do this. And so independent investigation of truth and the oneness of humanity are really two sides of the same coin, because this oneness indicates that this is something all of us can do. And what is it that we can do? We can investigate reality. So he particularly emphasized those two principles. And sometimes he talked about oneness of mankind first, sometimes he talked about investigation of reality first. Then following from those, well, he also talks about the oneness of religion, and also the harmony of religion and science, which also follows from investigation of reality, since God created the natural world and science is the rational exploration of the natural world, and revelation itself is not contradictory of reason, so religion and science are not contradictory either. He emphasized abandonment of prejudices, which of course make it hard for us to investigate reality. He talked about the adjustment of economic standards, the equality of men and women. One obvious application of the oneness of humanity is the equality of all people, regardless of their gender. He emphasized universal education, because people can't investigate reality until they get a certain amount of access to knowledge. It's that access to knowledge and experience that allows you to do the investigating. He emphasized that religion has to be a cause of love and unity, emphasized the establishment of equal standards of human rights around the world, the need for a universal auxiliary language, and the power of the Holy Spirit he often talked about. In one of his last talks in New York, he also added to the Baha'is that these things could only happen if the faith could build its administrative order and establish the universal house of justice. It was the covenant that made these principles actually possible in the world. Until then, we can spread them, people can follow them to some extent, but since it's not part of their belief in God, they're not necessarily going to follow it really all the way. They're going to follow it to the extent that they think it makes sense, and then they may abandon it if it doesn't seem to make sense anymore. So it's that acceptance of Baha'u'llah ultimately that makes these teachings possible in the world, applicable in the world. At the time in 1912, when Abdu'l-Baha visited North America, the dominant opinion among northern white Protestants, who were the working class, the ruling class of the country, of course, they were the majority of the population, they believed that white people were superior to other people, though they paid a certain amount of lip service to equality. They believed that Christianity was superior to all the other religions, and they believed that their own civilization was the superior civilization in the world. This has been called by a scholar of Islam in America the conflation of race, religion, and progress. In other words, it's our race and our religion that brings about progress. They're all the same thing. So that's what it means by conflation. So that was the attitude of northern white Protestants in the United States at the time, and I suspect a large number of Canadian white Protestants as well. Abdu'l-Baha turned all of this on its head in terms of race, religion, and progress. He replaced the superiority of race with the idea of the oneness of humanity, that there is no superiority, that all races are equal and the same. He replaced the idea of the superiority of one religion with the idea of the oneness of religion. And he emphasized not material progress, but the importance of spiritual progress for all of human beings. So he changed the equation completely around in his talks. And he frequently emphasized in his talks the oneness of humanity. But what was the oneness of humanity from Abdu'l-Baha's point of view? When he spoke to the African American audiences, they immediately understood what he was talking about. And they were very excited that he would talk about the oneness of humanity, because they realized that the oneness of humanity meant that people can't play lip service to the idea that they're equal. They can't be discriminated against if there's oneness of humanity. The white audiences did not really get the idea quite as well as the African Americans. And a great example of that was Abdu'l-Baha was speaking in Boston to the Free Religious Association, which was people who were sort of like post-Christian. They were religious people who believed in all the good things about Christianity. And the host, when he was introducing Abdu'l-Baha, said that, isn't it amazing that a man from Persia would teach and believe exactly the same thing as us, you see. But that man would not have gone home and encouraged his daughter to marry a black man. That's guaranteed, considering the way the society was in the United States in 1912. And Abdu'l-Baha, while he was traveling across the United States, was not only championing interracial marriage to the African Americans. He didn't talk about it to the whites because he knew they weren't ready, but he was actually encouraging Louis Gregory, African American lawyer in Washington, D.C., and Louisa Matthew, an English woman. They had met each other briefly when they were on pilgrimage in 1911 or 1910, and he saw something in them. He encouraged Louisa Matthew to come to America with him. So she came down from England down to Italy and got onto the ship with Abdu'l-Baha in Naples, where his ship had docked for a few days. She came to the United States with him, and he subtly encouraged her and Louis Gregory to consider getting married. And at first, they didn't get it. And then finally, they were in Chicago, May 2nd or 3rd, then 2 or 3 weeks after they arrived in the United States. She wanted to ask him about this. So she asked Qudsiya Khanum Ashraf, who was a Persian Baha'i living in the United States, a woman, to translate for her. And she went to see Abdu'l-Baha with Qudsiya Khanum Ashraf translating and tried to pin Abdu'l-Baha down about this. And Abdu'l-Baha said, this is just, people can get married if they want. They don't have to get married. But this was my hope that the two of you would consider it. And she left, and then Louis Gregory came in, and it came up with Louis Gregory. And he left his meeting with Abdu'l-Baha and walked around downtown Chicago for several hours thinking about this, because the thing Abdu'l-Baha was suggesting would get him hanged in half the states in the United States. But they loved Abdu'l-Baha, and they came to love each other. Starting in May, June, July, August, they got to know each other, and they got married on September 30th of 1912. The American Baha'is, many of them were shocked. They felt this is a great idea, the oneness of humanity, but not this, not yet. We're not ready for it. But for the next 40 years, this interracial couple was in all of their meetings, and they saw the oneness of humanity again and again in their meetings. And this had a great impact on the American Baha'i community, and other interracial marriages, of course, followed. And today, it's surprising how many Baha'is have interracial or interethnic marriages. And it's a great testament to Abdu'l-Baha's confidence in us, and this challenge that he gave the North American Baha'is, that so many have arisen and followed this idea. Abdu'l-Baha also spoke about the equality of men and women. He emphasized it. He actually spoke about it. It was published in newspapers that he said women should have the right to vote. And this became newspaper headlines in a few cases. Women did not have the right to vote in the United States in national elections until 1920. In 1912, there were a few places that gave women the vote. California actually gave women the right to vote in 1912 for local and state elections. Wyoming, Utah also had given them the right to vote earlier. In fact, in the Utah State Capitol building, they have a mural of a line of people, in frontier clothing, lined up to vote, put their votes in a ballot box, and the first one there is a woman putting her vote in the ballot box. The Mormons are particularly proud with the fact that they were the first state, one of the first states in the United States that gave women the right to vote, though they did take it away later and had to give it to them again in 1895. So this was an important statement of Abdu'l-Baha's, that women should have the right to vote. He also warned about an upcoming war in Europe 6 times. It was published in a newspaper in Montreal. You all may have seen that particular statement. I think that's probably the most famous statement of his, that there was a impending danger of war in Europe. But I also found it in New York City, Milford, Pennsylvania, Buffalo, Omaha, and Sacramento that he makes this statement. And this is not something people took seriously in 1912. In 1912, the attitudes of people, especially in Europe, was that they were now an enlightened Christian civilization, and this Christian civilization was the superior civilization in the world, and these Christians had managed to come up with political arrangements that would resolve differences between them sufficiently so they wouldn't ever have to go to war against each other. So when World War I began in 1914, it was a great shock. And of course, the result of the war was killing something like 1/3 of the young men aged 18 to 21 or 22 in England, France, and Germany. Terrible, terrible blow to those countries. So many young men were killed. And after the war, people no longer had the confidence that Christian civilization was quite so enlightened. And after the war, a Protestant theology actually changed. Instead of being optimistic about the idea of being able to build the kingdom of God on earth through progressive reform, people began to emphasize the idea of Paul, of the Apostle Paul, about original sin, and how with original sin operating in human affairs, human beings could never perfect their civilization. So that particular war was devastating, really, for the idea that Christianity could bring about a perfect society. And Abdu'l-Baha saw this coming. There were not a lot of white intellectuals who paid any attention to Abdu'l-Baha very seriously, unfortunately. 2 exceptions that we're aware of. One was a man named Thomas Kelly Cheney, who was a prominent British biblical scholar, professor at Oxford. He met Abdu'l-Baha when Abdu'l-Baha came to speak at Oxford. And then a year later, he published this book, The Reconciliation of Races and Religions. Cheney considered himself a Baha'i, though he was a Baha'i and you might say an Anglican at the same time, because in those days you could kind of do that. But nevertheless, he published this amazing book, Reconciliation of Races and Religions. And that was, his last work, because he died about a year later. A professor at Stanford who taught French and English, Albert Léon Guérard, French Huguenot background, became a strong supporter of world government, the need of an international auxiliary language, and helped to draft a world constitution after World War II. He heard Abdu'l-Baha speak when Abdu'l-Baha was speaking at Stanford University, and Guérard told generations of Baha'is afterwards about Abdu'l-Baha's talk. He mentioned it to Firuz Kazemzadeh and to Amin Banani when they were there. He spoke to Arthur Lyon Dahl, who was a student there in the 50s. And in fact, Arthur Dahl even recorded an interview with Guérard about Abdu'l-Baha's visit. So we have a lot of evidence that Guérard thought a lot about the faith, though he never became a Baha'i, and he never was a great, polished, well-known thinker either. He was not famous, but he was nevertheless someone who was influenced by Abdu'l-Baha in some sense. Abdu'l-Baha had much more of an impact on African-American intellectuals than on white intellectuals. And I think this makes sense. African Americans understood the importance of the oneness of humanity in ways that white people didn't. And so African Americans responded to Abdu'l-Baha more readily, and especially African American intellectuals. W.E.B. Du Bois, who was one of the most famous African American thinkers in the early 20th century, published this magazine called The Crisis, and he named Abdu'l-Baha Man of the Month in the May issue. In the June issue, he covered Abdu'l-Baha's talks in Chicago, and in 1921, he had an article about Abdu'l-Baha's passing. Du Bois was married twice, and his first wife was a Baha'i as well. So Du Bois had quite an interesting relationship with the Baha'i community, which continued all the way up into the 1950s when Du Bois died. So that was an important example of Abdu'l-Baha's impact on one of the most important African-American intellectuals in the 20th century. Chicago Defender publisher Robert Abbott became a Baha'i in the 1930s when he retired from running the Chicago Defender. He met Abdu'l-Baha in 1912 and was very impressed and was a friend of the faith for many, many years until he actually became a Baha'i. And so his newspaper was probably the most widely read African-American newspaper in the United States. And The Crisis, of course, would have been the most widely read African-American magazine, you might say, or national publication that there was. And then, of course, possibly, well, one of 2 or 3 of the most important African-American intellectuals in the 20th century, Alain Locke, who actually became a Baha'i in 1918. He never met Abdu'l-Baha when Abdu'l-Baha was here. I'm not even sure he was in the United States. He might have been in Europe at that time because he spent a lot of time in Europe studying in Germany and in England. But he later came back to the United States. He became professor of philosophy at Howard University in Washington, D.C., and he's often considered the dean of the Harlem Renaissance. He knew all of the people in Harlem who were the literati, the novelists, the people interested in art criticism and painting in African-American history. And he was one of the leading figures organizing the Harlem Renaissance. He remained a Baha'i and remained more or less an active Baha'i right up into the 1950s when he passed away. And when the American Baha'i community was involved in doing race unity efforts, he was generally a member of the committee who organized the race unity efforts nationally. Shoghi Effendi, he went on pilgrimage, he met Shoghi Effendi, and I believe it was the Kitab-i-Igan that Shoghi Effendi sent to him and asked him for comments before it was published, though I'm not aware of whether Alain Locke actually read it at that point and made suggestions for ways the Guardian could change his grammar, which was why the Guardian sent it to him, you see. I'm not sure he ever actually responded to that, but nevertheless, he was honored with that opportunity. I have just a couple more slides because I don't want to go too long. At this time in 1912, there were perhaps 1,500 Baha'is in the United States and Canada, not a large number, 1,000 to 2,000, depending on whether you wanted to count only the really devoted people or the people sort of more farther out on the penumbra, farther out in terms of levels of activity. So he met a large number of them. A large number of them were able to meet him, encounter him, of course, with his travels across the country, visiting all the major communities. When he was in Chicago, he had the Chicago Baha'i House of Spirituality, which was their local spiritual assembly, to ask them to re-elect their members because there was one person who was a covenant breaker who had been attending meetings and had been elected to the House of Spirituality. When he was in New York, he had the New York Baha'i Council, Board of Council, also re-elected so that they would follow the Baha'i standards a little better. He met with both the Chicago and New York spiritual assemblies. They weren't called spiritual assemblies, but that's what they were. And of course, when he was in Chicago, he went out to Wilmette and laid the cornerstone for the Baha'i temple. The decision to build a temple was made by Chicago in 1903. In 1912, they had only managed to purchase the property, but he did lay a cornerstone. They finally selected a design, which of course was a French-Canadian bourgeois who came up with a design. They selected, I think it was 1919, began building the temple, and it was not finished until 1953. So it was a long process of building that house of worship in Wilmette, and it was a prime task of the North American Baha'is to build it. Quite a remarkable story all by itself. How many people became Baha'is while he was in North America? I don't know. There was a huge number. I'm guessing about 50 people joined the faith. I'm aware of around 25, and I'm guessing that probably about half of the people who joined I haven't heard of, So something like 50 people. But there were a lot of other changes that happened. A lot of children of Baha'i families, if you ask them, when did you become a Baha'i? They say, 1912, I became a Baha'i in 1912. Maybe they were 6, maybe they were 8, maybe they were 12. years old, but they saw Abdu'l-Baha and he had an enormous impact on the kids, and they remembered him. And so a lot of the people who became devoted Baha'is in Baha'i families really consider 1912 the year that they became Baha'is. Many young Baha'is were, older than that, also were deeply affected by this. Many veteran Baha'is had to change the way they saw the faith profoundly as a result of Abdu'l-Baha. And I think perhaps the person who was affected the most would be Howard McNutt, who was a prominent Baha'i in New York City. He was quite a racist before 1912. When he would write letters to people, like in 1905, 1903, he would have little postcards, and he would write a note to people on the postcard to mail to them. And on the other side of the postcard, there would be a racist picture of a young black kid eating watermelon, or some other racist stereotype on it. I was shocked when I saw these, I'll tell you. And one time when there was two Baha'is who went to India, and he wrote one of them, Hooper Harris, who was from the South. And in his letter, he said to Hooper Harris, "Let me tell you some jokes, but don't share them with Harlan." Harlan Ober was the other Baha'i, and he was from New England. And I guess Harlan Ober was not going to be tolerant of racist jokes. And so then Howard McNutt proceeds to tell a whole bunch of racist jokes in this letter he sends to Hooper Harris. Well, when Abdu'l-Baha comes to New York City, all of that has to change. And you may have seen the movie of the moving movie of Abdu'l-Baha in Howard McNutt's backyard, where there are little black children, and Abdu'l-Baha's kissing the little black children, and there's this long line of people going past Abdu'l-Baha, and Abdu'l-Baha shaking hands, and there are white people and black people all together in Howard McNutt's house. So clearly, he had to learn. And later on, when he and his wife retired, they retired to Miami, and they proceeded to teach the Baha'i faith in the black neighborhoods of Miami, not the white neighborhoods. So he made a huge change in his life as a result of meeting Abdu'l-Baha. And that, to me, is one of the best examples of how Abdu'l-Baha could change people. He, of course, stressed the importance of teaching the faith to other people. It was such a small community in those days. They badly needed new members. Almost no one had ever heard of the Baha'i faith. He stressed the importance of love and service to others as an important aspect of the Baha'i life that would attract people naturally. You don't do it to attract people, you do it because you love people. He encouraged the Baha'is to travel and to teach the faith in new places. And all of this, of course, laid the foundation for the tablets of the Divine Plan. 14 tablets he sent to the Baha'is of the United States and Canada in 1916 and 1917, which gave them the mandate to take the Baha'i faith to the entire world. And so he's preparing them for this while he's visiting North America, visiting all these communities and teaching them. His visit, in many ways, makes the tablets of the Divine Plan possible. Similarly, while he's talking to the Baha'is, he's preparing them to understand steadfastness and obedience. Baha'is weren't very good at that. He's stressing those things and teaching the faith. And he's talking continuously about the covenant of the faith. And in fact, when he's in New York City, he declares himself to be the center of the covenant, and the city of New York being the city of the covenant. And when he declares himself the center of the covenant, it has a huge electric effect on the Baha'is who witness this, actually. It's frequently in private meetings with mostly Baha'is, he talks about the importance of the Universal House of Justice, the future Universal House of Justice. He never talks about the guardianship. Remember, in 1912, Shoghi Effendi is, 15 years old. And if you start talking about the guardianship and his future guardian, he has to worry about someone wanting to poison Shoghi Effendi or do something similarly. So he does not mention the guardianship at all. He's got to protect Shoghi Effendi. But many of his comments deepening the Baha'is anticipate the will and testament when it becomes publicly available in 1921. So those are something else that he very much is working on. Finally, his legacy. Generations of Baha'is are inspired to serve the faith and to serve humanity as a result of his visit. People who want to improve the world can draw great inspiration from his talks and the principles that he emphasized. And their day will come when the people of Iran will come to appreciate their favorite son, Abdu'l-Baha, with all of his emphasis on human rights, equality of men and women, tolerance of other religions, and nonviolence. These are teachings that Iran badly needs. And Abdu'l-Baha, his championing of these principles, someday will be greatly understood and appreciated in the cradle of the Baha'i Faith, Iran. So those are my comments. And shall I stop sharing my screen? And happy to answer any questions or offer other ideas to anybody.
Thank you so very, very much. I really appreciate it, Rob. Thank you so much. There are few things in the chat, but if friends have a question, please go ahead. I'm so glad about the book that you just mentioned, Abdu'l-Baha, the Son of Persia, the forgotten chapter of history of enlightenment in Iran, and you have such a beautiful, beautiful paper in that. You've included
Oh, I
that.
forgot about that.
Yeah, I'm showing this to our friends. It's a,
Farsi, yes, of
it's
course.
in
Needless to say,
Farsi.
I didn't write it in Persian.
No, but it was translated beautifully.
That's good.
Beautifully. Thank you for that.
Sure. Yeah, they asked me not to mention Swami Vivekananda and a few other people. They didn't know how to translate that into Persian. So I had to drop some things from the article. I see my good friend Jack McLean has his hand up.
Absolutely.
Hey Jack, how warm or cold is it up there in Ottawa
Hello,
right now?
Robert. Well, spring is coming late to Ottawa. I'll tell you, we're longing for the sun and we're going to have a lot of rain next week. Rob, you mentioned the Unitarian Church and Abdu'l-Baha, as you probably know, and thank you for one of the best talks I've ever heard. I mean, who else but you could deliver a talk like this? Anyway, he did speak at the Church of the Messiah, the Unitarian Church in Montreal
Yep.
on September 1st, 1912, and that found its, as I mentioned in the notes, that talk found its way into the promulgation of universal peace. But why he didn't, so you're saying he didn't speak in any Unitarian churches in the faith, eh? In the
Not very
States.
many. Not very many in the US.
Okay.
For example, Boston has more Unitarian churches than anywhere else in the United States, right? That everybody would joke that the Unitarians believed in the fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, and the neighborhood of Boston. Okay. And I don't think he spoke in a single Unitarian church in Boston. And he didn't speak at Harvard either, which is the bastion of Unitarianism also. He did speak to the Unitarian, not the Unitarian University, the Unitarian Association, their national convention, just like we have national conventions, they have an annual national convention. And he did speak to 2,000 Unitarians at the convention in May of 1912. And then 2 days later at the Free Religious Association meeting, which also occurred in Boston. So, and they were sort of Unitarians, sort of too. So he did speak to those associations, but not very much in Unitarian churches. Just kind of interesting.
Yeah, because they were very liberal churches, weren't they?
Oh yeah, and they had sponsored Mozumdar was the first Hindu to come to the United States. He's Pratap Chunder Mozumdar came to the United States in the 1880s, and then again in the 1890s. First time a Hindu had come to the United States to speak, and he spoke in Unitarian churches. But I'm not sure if there must have been. Well, actually, no. The church in Dublin, New Hampshire, which is Unitarian today, was Congregationalist then, if I remember right.
And
So
as you know, Swami Vivekananda went to Greenacre. I love that guy. He's a very interesting figure.
he is. He's the only other person who said, they're really arming themselves awful lot in Europe. It looks to me like the Europeans really overdoing it with their arms. He didn't predict a war, though. No one else seemed to take the arms race going on in Europe seriously the way Abdu'l-Baha did, but Vivekananda was one exception.
Yeah, he spoke at the, as you know, the World Parliament of Religions, and he started his talk with brothers and sisters of America, and everybody broke into a great applause. They loved it, you know.
Oh, he knew how to play to an audience. First of all, he was educated. He spoke with a little bit of a sort of maybe an Irish brogue kind of an accent, which was puzzling. He knew how to quote European philosophers, and he did not mince words. You know, you all think your Christian civilization is so great. Well, you're introducing the drinking of liquor in India, and people are getting hooked on your liquor because of your great civilization. He would say those kinds of things, and he would attack Christian missionaries in India as well. This is very different from the way Abdu'l-Baha was. Abdu'l-Baha wouldn't do that kind of thing. But Vivekananda didn't mince words, and as a result, he was very controversial, and he got a lot of newspaper coverage. So,
Very interesting guy. Thank you, Rob.
yeah, but the contrast between the two of them is quite interesting. Aaron has a question.
Go ahead, Aaron. Welcome, Aaron. This is the first time I'm seeing you. Welcome.
Yes, hi, thank you. The comments about the Unitarian Church got me thinking. Back in 2024, I did a presentation at the Unitarian Universalist congregation in Casper, Wyoming. I presented one of the talks, did an introduction and question and answer period from promulgation of universal peace that where Abdu'l-Baha talked to one of the Unitarian congregations. And afterwards, one of the comments from the one of the people there was that her grandmother or her grandfather had told stories about going to see Abdu'l-Baha's talks in Denver, Colorado.
Oh, wow.
When he was going through there. And I thought that was a wonderful bit. And the Unitarians and the Baha'is and Casper are close. They're both small groups, but they're close in their relationship to one another. Just thought I'd add that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Abdu'l-Baha spoke at the Divine Science Church in Denver. Divine science is a little related to Christian science. It's not the same thing at all, but it's a similar kind of what they call a New Thought movement. So he spoke there and to some of the New Thought groups in California as well, a couple of times. But yeah, thank you for that comment, Aaron.
Thank you so much. Is there any more questions? The chat is full of questions. I will address them. Before I address that, I would like to welcome Diana, who is joining us from Belize with her whole family. Welcome, welcome. Please stay for the closing prayer with the children and everyone. Now, let's go to the chat.
Well, there's Nan. Let's see what Nan Ackerman, my good friend Nancy, has to say. And then we can go to the chat.
Oh, that's it. Go ahead, Nancy, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I came in a little late. My question may be odd, but given that anti-Semitism is the oldest hatred, as it's often called, I wonder, did Abdu'l-Baha talk about anti-Semitism? Do we know?
Sort of. But in some ways that didn't always go over well with the Jewish audience.
Oh, really?
He spoke, like I said, 3 synagogues. We don't have his talk in St. Paul, Minneapolis, the St. Paul synagogue, but his talks in Washington and in San Francisco are in promulgation of universal peace. And in San Francisco, where the rabbi was had been to Jerusalem and spoke Arabic and was had a PhD and they actually spoke to each other in Arabic for a while. His talk went over, I would say, better than it did in Washington. The talk that he basically gave in both of them said that look what Jesus did by teaching the world about Moses. Did this do any harm to Jews that Jesus told everybody about Moses? The world now all knows about Moses. Isn't it marvelous? Would it do you any harm to accept Jesus in some sense? He doesn't, exactly what he means by that is not clear, because he could easily have said that about Muhammad. He did it actually to some churches, sort of talk about Muhammad that way. And nobody took it to mean we had to become Muslims. But you say that at a synagogue and it sounds like you should renounce your Judaism and become Christians. And so this upset some people, and especially when he said it in Washington, D.C. So the next day, the rabbi, what's her name, Mrs. Parsons, Abdu'l-Baha was staying at Mrs. Parsons' house at the time. So Mrs. Parsons invited the rabbi over, and that conversation between the two of them is also recorded. It's in my book, Abdu'l-Baha in America. I'm not sure I can give it quite justice. We should check to see exactly what I said. He said, but he's in one place. He said to the rabbi, if you don't acknowledge Jesus, this will cause even greater persecution of your people. It sounds almost like he's anticipating the Holocaust. So there's that particular comment of Abdu'l-Baha's. Now, nowadays, all of this sounds very, very strange or even anti-Semitic to people. But you have to remember that before World War II, Jewish rabbis often talked about Jesus as a kind of rabbi. Okay, they tended to acknowledge him to some extent. And there was much more, well, I'm not sure what to say, how to put it, a little more tolerance in the Jewish community about language and how Judaism was talked about, which, after World War II, people were not willing to be quite so tolerant that way. So Abdu'l-Baha was speaking to a different kind of audience and using a language that worked in that audience that today doesn't seem so comfortable or as accommodating. But there was no accommodating language. There wasn't the interfaith dialogue that we have today, and that the sort of the terms that we've developed didn't exist then. So,
thank you, Rob. That's very interesting.
It really is kind of interesting, actually.
I have to read your book.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Usually Nancy has a meeting on Thursday evenings, but I think she made a point to be here. Nan, it's noted. Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's nice to see my dear old friend Nancy from Brookline, Massachusetts, too.
Lovely, lovely. I have a question myself, and there are a million things in the chat. Do you want me to ask my question, or would you like me to go to? Yeah, my question is, would it be possible for you to talk about how Abdu'l-Baha talked about peace? And it's as if these talks just happened 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, with the situation of the world. Would you like probably to address that?
I'm not sure how to address that. That's an interesting question, and I have to think about that. I think one of the things Abdu'l-Baha said in Stanford is very interesting. He talked about how the lines on maps are imaginary dotted lines that just cross hills and mountains and rivers, and they don't correspond to geography sometimes. And the people on one side of the line will hate the people on the other side of the line. And this makes no sense, And he particularly talked about this in the context of Europe. And he talked about how Germans hate the French and the French hate the Germans, and how, bloody this can be. Of course, this is 2 years before World War I is fought exactly between the Germans and the French, mostly. And he's saying this to a bunch of young men in Stanford, many of whom are going to be, drafted in the American Army in about 4 or 5 years. So it's really very interesting. He talks endlessly about the uselessness of war, the damage that it does, the bloodshed, the meaninglessness of war. And so there's a lot there to consider, I think.
Thank
And
you.
certainly what we increasingly are seeing in the world is when you use force, the other side escalates and they use force. And then you either have to back down, which no one wants to do after having used force the first time, or you have to escalate again. And I think we're seeing that, especially in the last 20 or 30 years in the Middle East. We've seen a continuous escalation of violence and force in the Middle East. And that bodes very, very badly for the future of the Middle East. You know, if one country gets a bomb, other countries will want the bomb, you know, and it will go on and on from there.
At the end of the fireside, we always have 20 minutes prayers, and these prayers are dedicated to the Middle East, particularly in Iran. Mary writes, I came in because I'm working on a piece about Abdu'l-Baha in Kenosha. I would welcome any ideas about that.
Well, he was only in Kenosha for a few hours or so, it seems to me. And I don't know a lot about that visit. Of course, his talk is in Promulgation of Universal Peace. A very interesting thing happened on his way to Kenosha, if you know the story. He is at the train station, the train is there, he's standing on the platform, and he doesn't get on the train. And everybody else in his party is saying, what's going on? We're going to miss the train. And he misses the train. And then, of course, another train pulls in, and he gets on the next train to Kenosha, which is the wrong train. But they passed the first train on their way up, and it had crashed. So you have that really interesting incident. But I don't remember what he said in Kenosha. Kenosha is a very interesting community because it was a blue-collar, working-class community of German and Scandinavian immigrants who became Baha'is. And they became Baha'is as entire families. So it was a very unusual community that way. American Baha'is, you know, from other parts of the country would visit Kenosha, and they would say, the Baha'i community here is like a little country church. Because, you know, in New York City, 3/4 of the Baha'is were women. Only a quarter of them were male. And usually families didn't join the faith. They were usually individuals, single individuals who joined the faith. And they were generally wealthier, middle to upper middle class, a lot more Episcopalians and liberal Protestants, whereas Kenosha were working class, blue collar workers, not well educated, recent immigrants, and families. It's a very interesting contrast, and it shows you how the Baha'i faith could attract many different kinds of people.
Go ahead, Jack. Thank you.
Thank you for this. Rob, I've always been intrigued. Maybe you can explain this to me in a little more detail. Why Abdu'l-Baha made such a big production out of having Howard McNutt confess, you know, I was Saul, now I'm Paul. Now, I know he didn't exactly do the job of, the master sent him to, I think, Kenosha to straighten out the
Chicago.
Chicago.
Twice.
To straighten out the, so can you fill us in on why Abdu'l-Baha had him, he really had him publicly humiliated, didn't he?
He did. He had him publicly humiliate himself. Yes. Well, that's according to Juliet Thompson's diary. And there are other accounts of this which aren't quite the same. And I right offhand can't remember how I reconciled all these different versions. You can read my book again, but I don't remember quite how I pieced it all together. What happened was that, as I mentioned, I think it was in 1911 when the Chicago Baha'is reelected their House of Spirituality, they elected a man named Frederick Nutt, not MacNutt, just Nutt, to the House of Spirituality. And he was a member of Ibrahim Carella's Covenant Breaker group in Chicago. The group had been gradually fading away, and some of the Covenant Breaker members were attending Baha'i meetings and were active in them, so he got elected to the House of Spirituality. So when Abdu'l-Baha came to America, he was very concerned, it would seem, about Frederick Nutt, Corinne True came to New York and spent a week or two with Abdu'l-Baha in New York, and they talked about it. And I guess she probably informed him of what she knew about the situation. So then when Abdu'l-Baha was in Dublin, New Hampshire, which is early August, I think. Early August. He summons Howard MacNutt to come all the way up from New York City. And MacNutt stays overnight, and Abdu'l-Baha explains to him that he wants him to go to Chicago and have the Chicago Baha'is re-elect their governing body and re-elect it in such a way that only people who are loyal to the covenant and, followers of Abdu'l-Baha would be elected to it. He even gave MacNutt money to buy his round-trip tickets, which, of course, MacNutt had plenty of money, so he didn't need it. So MacNutt went out to Chicago, and the Baha'i community there did indeed re-elect their governing body, and it did not have Frederick Nutt on it anymore. So that was good. But the covenant breakers were still going to the meetings. So I guess it was November of 1912. Abdu'l-Baha's back in New York City. He sends MacNutt back to Chicago, basically to go meet with the covenant breakers and say, leave us alone. Stop coming to the meetings, and tell the Baha'is to stop letting them come. And the covenant breakers love bombed him. Oh, no, you misunderstand us. We're good people. We love the faith. We want to be united with the Baha'is, this kind of thing. So Abdu'l-Baha Howard MacNutt comes back to New York and says, oh, Abdu'l-Baha, we were all wrong about these people, you see. And Abdu'l-Baha was not fooled, of course, by the covenant breakers and was very upset by MacNutt. So Abdu'l-Baha, I guess, laid it into him in private about this and sent him downstairs and had him confess to the Baha'is that, I was once Saul and I'm now Paul. I now see. There's a little bit of background to that to keep in mind also, and that's that MacNutt all along believed that people can perfect themselves, and that he didn't basically believe in the original sin of the ego, that people could overcome their ego and could make themselves like Abdu'l-Baha. Okay. And there was actually an argument in the New York community around 1906 about this, because Howard MacNutt and Arthur Dodge were the two most prominent Baha'is in New York, and Arthur Dodge believed that Abdu'l-Baha was the return of Christ. And Howard MacNutt believed that Abdu'l-Baha had achieved his greatness through his own struggle. Okay? Which is also not right either. So the New York Board of Council tried to figure out what to do about this, and they finally said to both of them, okay, write up your understanding of who Abdu'l-Baha is, and we'll send this to Abdu'l-Baha and ask him to answer the question. So they both wrote up their description of who they thought Abdu'l-Baha was and sent those things to Haifa. I suppose those are in the archives, and I'd love to see them. And Abdu'l-Baha replied with a very, very famous tablet you've probably all seen. My name is Abdu'l-Baha. My qualification is Abdu'l-Baha. Obedience to the most great, whatever, is my highest aspiration. So when we received that tablet in the context of the fight between the two of them, and he says, I'm not the return of Christ in that tablet. So people read that and said, oh, Dodge is wrong, MacNutt is right. But MacNutt wasn't right either, you see. But the result after that was when they had re-elected their governing body, Arthur Dodge and his son were not re-elected to it. So you can see how this sort of percolates in the Baha'i community, right? So MacNutt, you see, is quite confident that if Abdu'l-Baha can achieve his greatness, covenant breakers, they can change, if they say they're good, well, maybe they can become good, you see. So that's the problem with MacNutt, is he did not understand that dimension of human beings. And so Abdu'l-Baha works with him, and then when Abdu'l-Baha leaves and goes to England, he removes Howard MacNutt from membership in the Baha'i community. And he has Ali Quli Khan, prominent Persian Baha'i living in the United States, meeting with MacNutt for about a year. And in 1913 or 1914, he readmits MacNutt into the Baha'i community. So that's the other end of the story.
Oh my goodness, he actually removed him from the faith.
He removed him from the Baha'i community. And then, of course, a few years later, when everybody says we've really got to organize all these great talks Abdu'l-Baha gave, Abdu'l-Baha gives Howard McNutt the job to edit Promulgation of Universal Peace. So that volume that we have of Abdu'l-Baha's talks was put together by Howard McNutt. And Abdu'l-Baha, of course, wrote a tablet and gave it the title, The Promulgation of Universal Peace. So McNutt was rehabilitated. And he, like I said, he suffered a lot. He had to change himself quite a lot with racist attitudes and his almost say smugness of the idea of the superiority of that people can achieve. He changed a lot.
Rob, wasn't there a tragic circumstance to his death?
Well, yes, he was walking to this Baha'i meeting in the black part of Miami and got run over by a motorcycle or a car. I can't remember which. Yeah, his wife had just fallen down the stairs and died a few days earlier, if I remember right. And so he's walking to the meeting and he gets struck by a car and killed. Yeah.
Was there any suggestion that that was ever done deliberately? Because
not that I know of. I don't know that there's whether there was a police investigation or not. But in those days, there were no stop signs and people didn't always have driver's licenses. And I mean, if you think driving is bad now, I think it must have been much worse in 1912. And I'll tell you, one of the things, here's a side story that sort of relates to that. It's very funny to read the stories about Abdu'l-Baha going to meetings in people's cars, because they would stuff like 10 people into a car. And they'd be like 8 people sitting in the back seat and 3 in the front. I mean, if you can imagine what this was like, putting all these people in the cars. We wouldn't do that nowadays.
Thank you so much, Rob. I really appreciate
thank you,
it.
Rob.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. I just wanted to say that Jack will be one of our speakers in very near future. There are so many things in the chat. I'm almost confused. And they are asking about if this particular talk is being recorded and put on YouTube. Yes. And I put the link there for you. Dr. Al, I will send it to you myself. And so, Rob, there's somebody wrote that Dr. Etamad said, Abdu'l-Baha did a very long talk at the Unitarian Church in Philadelphia in June of 1912, talked about the main principles of the Baha'i faith. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I didn't say he didn't talk in any of them, but I couldn't remember where he had.
Right.
And I'm sure that's correct. And there are 1 or 2 other places in the country. I think he spoke at Unitarian churches, but I'm not sure he spoke to any in New England, which is particularly the thing that surprised me.
Yes, yes.
Of course, the big talk he gave in Philadelphia was at Baptist Temple. And Baptist Temple is a very interesting story, because this is a much more mainstream Protestant group than the Unitarians. And Russell Conwell, who was the minister there, is actually quite an interesting figure in American religious history. He's quite well known in American religious history. So he's a fascinating man, actually. And he wrote Abdu'l-Baha specifically, invited Abdu'l-Baha to speak. So it's significant that Conwell invited Abdu'l-Baha.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Gary, go ahead, please.
As always, I love your presentations. Very rich. So I have 2 and a question, I guess. Everyone sings the song, "Look at me, follow me, be as I am, Abdu'l-Baha." And then there's that the writing that talks about strive that your actions may be beautiful prayers. Pardon me for jumbling the words. So with your presentations, what would be the walk away for people? Because we come in these spaces and we get filled. We hear the accounts and they're beautiful. But the writings aren't just they're to motivate us. These accounts are to motivate us to do X, Y, and Z. Some of the things still exist in the faith. The gentleman you talked about that had those racist tendencies, that It's still here.
Oh, yeah.
But that's space that no one really likes to talk in, because the first thing it says, oh, this is a source of disunity. Oh, this is this and that. No, it's not. To learn to be in those spaces, to be uncomfortable, stand at the table and really work through these things that people are infected by because of the societies, the systemic systems of racism that exist, that function, that people live and thrive in every day. But we sing the song, look at me, follow me, be as I am. So I always say, okay, we get these accounts, but what did Abdu'l-Baha do in these moments? So your walk away, an offering is what I'm looking for, because people come in these spaces and they get filled. But what do we do? It's like getting gasoline in your car.
Yeah. Well, I think the answer.
Thank you, Gary.
The answer to that, to me, is that there may be different walkaways for each person. I mean, I think Abdu'l-Baha's staunch upholding of his position on the oneness of humanity is itself a takeaway for all of us and a reminder that we have to be the same. His emphasis on equality of men and women, this is also something that the Baha'i community has not overcome. Okay, this is again something for us to learn from. His ability to speak to people of all the different religions, this to me is very inspiring and something else that we can learn from. His call for us to teach the faith is another aspect of all of this. So to me, there are different takeaways depending on what touches the heart of each person. And I would hope that people will come up with their own takeaway and will act on it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Joan, go ahead.
You're muted, Jones, still.
You have to unmute yourself, Joan. I'm sorry. Please unmute. Thank you.
Regarding the spirituality of the Baha'i Faith, we're talking about the teachings and we to live them out, but to have the grace spiritually to live them out. Would you please share the Baha'i teachings on spirituality and the Holy Spirit?
I can tell a story.
Thank you, Joan. Appreciate it.
I could probably talk about it more elaborately than that, though Jack might be able to talk about it better than me. Howard McNutt, back to Howard McNutt, asked Abdu'l-Baha how to pray. And so Abdu'l-Baha said, come to my house. And Howard McNutt is invited into Abdu'l-Baha's room, and Abdu'l-Baha's already praying and praying and praying and praying. And Howard McNutt is looking at the ceiling and feeling his knees hurt and such. And this was Howard McNutt's lesson for him, that he had to stop worrying about these other things and let go and feel the prayer. A similar kind of story actually is told about a Boston Baha'i, whose name eventually will come to me. And he finally realized that he had to close his eyes and feel the experience of the prayer. And he did. And that's how he learned about prayer from Abdu'l-Baha. But, it's very interesting what to say about spirituality, because we're called upon to have this close relationship with God. God is closer to us than our life vein, as it says in the Quran. And our entire life must be lived out with the relationship of this ongoing closeness with Baha'u'llah, because the unknowable essence of God is so beyond us that we can't actually experience all of the divine, just a little tiny piece of it. And all of the emphasis in the writings of the previous religions about oneness with God and experiencing God, Baha'u'llah says, are references to relationship with the manifestation of God, who, after all, having had a human form, is someone we can relate to more closely than we can with the unknowable essence. How's that? Does that help? Does that answer the question?
Yes. Well, because we're talking all the time about how to live it, and then we can only do it. I'm an Anglican priest, so it's very, very important to me to hear about prayer. And I'm just not hearing enough about that in the Baha'i Faith. I hear about the principles, which are wonderful, and all the teachings, but how do you arrive at being able to live them out in our life? And
have you,
like Gary was talking, you know.
Have you been to a Baha'i devotional?
I'm on my way. I'm very new.
Because you see, Baha'is, of course, we have hundreds and hundreds of prayers that Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Baha revealed. And when we get together to pray, we don't usually pray in our own words. We use the divine words instead, because these divine words model to us how to relate to God, what to ask for, what not to ask for, what approach, what attitude to have. And so our devotions are very much filled with these passages, these prayers, and they can be very important for people. When I first began to think about switching into the field of religious studies from geology, I have a master's degree in geology, I started to say one particular prayer in the prayer book every day, which has towards the end of it the line, the hosts of divine assistance descending successively upon me from the kingdom of thine omnipotent glory. And that resonated with me. I needed that divine assistance. And I was at that time doing research on Thornton Chase, the first American Baha'i. And I had been living in Rhode Island. He had gone to Brown University. I'd researched his life at Brown University and in Rhode Island and in Massachusetts. And I was thinking of writing a biography about him, which I eventually did. That summer, I went out to our archives in Wilmette, and I began to read through Thornton Chase's papers. And I should add, I continued to be saying that prayer every day because it was really directing me in terms of my career. And as I went through those papers, I found a collection of typed copies of Abdu'l-Baha's prayers that Thornton Chase had typed up. And I discovered that Abdu'l-Baha had revealed that prayer to Thornton Chase himself in 1899. I had been saying Thornton Chase's prayer every day. And so I still say it, maybe not quite every day, but I still say it almost as often as my obligatory prayer, because that prayer has become very, very meaningful to me. And in many ways, the make me a minaret of thy love in thy land, a lamp of thy knowledge among thy servants, and a banner of thy divine unity. I just can't say it off the top of my head. Those three things have become a kind of set of guidelines for me.
No, I do have the prayers of Baha'u'llah, and that's why I'm on these meetings, because the power of those prayers are speaking to my heart.
Yeah.
And so, thank you. Anyway,
thank you.
You're giving me another dimension that I just don't hear it yet. So,
may I ask Rob that when we start our devotionals, which will be about 5 minutes from now, you will start with that prayer. And dear Joan, can you say a prayer? It would really, really add to this session very much. And I, as a servant to this particular space, I welcome you, and I am extremely happy that you're with us tonight. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
You didn't look like a minister to me. But
Well, I'm an oldie. I'm a real oldie one.
She's not a minister, she's a priest.
oh, she's a priest. Thank you, Jack. Jack, always correct me. I'm making big mistakes every day. Thank you. Thank you, Joan. Thank you. Let me get the last question. Mr. Q, is it possible for you to kindly let us see your face? Hello, hello. Thank you so very much. Appreciate you're joining us from Singapore, yeah?
Yes, yes.
Thank you, thank you. Please go ahead.
Sorry, I was a bit late because it's early morning here, 7 o'clock. Anyway, I heard many times the talk by Robert, and this question is out of curiosity. I read a newspaper report that many of these gurus from the East who went to the West and they sought for money, financial aid and all that. I read that Abdu'l-Baha's journey in the West or to the West, he actually rejected the donation to go onto this bigger ship.
Yes.
You know, I was wondering how he financed all this himself.
Yes.
Yeah.
The joke answer, of course, is MasterCard. But seriously, it was the Huququllah. You know, the Baha'is in Iran were paying Huququllah to Abdu'l-Baha. And so he had a steady stream of money coming from the Persian friends. And at one point, he was beginning to run low because he was planning not to stay until December. I think he was probably planning to stay until September. So in July, he had to have Ali Akbar Nakhjavani, Ali Nakhjavani's father, I can't remember his exact first name, come to the United States with additional money and rice, I should add, for Abdu'l-Baha's trip, to extend his trip. So he was able to self-fund the trip because of basically the International Baha'i Fund, you might say. He was offered money to take the Titanic. He turned that down. Several times Baha'is offered money in the United States. He turned it down. Some Baha'is offered him jewelry. He turned it down. And in fact, this particular contrast was noticed by one of the most famous journalists in the United States, whose name, her name might escape me right now, but she met Abdu'l-Baha in New York City, and she was sort of a famous interviewer. She would interview people like the Wright brothers who flew the first airplane, for example, and then she would publish that interview in the newspapers. It was a syndicated column that she had. Kate Carew, that was her name. Kate Carew wasn't her real name, that was her pen name. And so Kate Carew goes to meet Abdu'l-Baha in New York in April of 1912, when Abdu'l-Baha had just arrived in New York. And she asks him some questions. And after she's done asking him questions, he invites her to go with him to the Bowery. And this is one of those situations where they pack 10 people into the car. And she's about to get into the car and kneel on the floor in the back seat. And she's thinking about funny line she can write in the newspaper about this ludicrous situation of being traveling in the car with Abdu'l-Baha. And Abdu'l-Baha looks at her and says, you know, journalists must take us seriously. They shouldn't tell funny stories about us. At the very moment she's thinking this, she says this in her article later. And then, of course, they go to the Bowery, and Abdu'l-Baha is giving each man, I think it was a quarter or 2 or 3 quarters in some cases. He sent 2 Baha'is to a local bank to get quarters, and he gave one, 300 French francs, and another one, some other bill. And they came back with these big sacks of quarters. And so after the men are fed at the Bowery for their free meal, they all line up, and Abdu'l-Baha gives all of them 1 or 2 quarters, which is enough for them to sleep in a house in a room, private room for the night. You know, that's how much it cost in those days. And Kate Carew comments about this and how this is amazing that these other gurus are coming asking for money and Abdu'l-Baha is giving it away instead.
Thank you.
That is such a beautiful story. That is such a beautiful. Mr. Hugh, I'm sorry you had to wake up very early tonight. A lot of our friends didn't come because of the time and all of that. Thank you for being here today, your day and my night.
My pleasure.
You're welcome. Friends, it's 8:37, and if you have any more questions, Rob, the chat is full of different informations, and would you like us to go to our devotion? Usually we start our devotions at 8:30, or would you like me to read all those? There are some information and some questions. I can copy and send it to you later.
Yeah, I'm looking at them right now.
Oh, okay.
And, it's very interesting. I don't know much about Jack's question about the deification of Jesus. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't write that article, no. I think I answered a lot of the other questions.
Sure.
So, yeah, but if you want to send me, oh yes, Abdu'l-Baha being a passenger in the car and seeing the cow.
Yes.
That's while they're driving from Dublin to Greenacre. And he had already made the comment that, philosophers are kind of like cows. If they deny spiritual reality, they only recognize physical reality. They're like the cows who only recognize physical reality. So he'd already said that, I think, and it got a good laugh in Dublin. And or maybe it was maybe here is the time he really realized it was a good line. So he says it in the car, and then subsequently he uses it a couple of times in California too. He often would reuse a clever line in his talks, which makes sense. Everyone does that. But yeah, you can find it in Promulgation in one of his talks in California, I think.
While you're reading that, Rob, I just wanted to mention that in the book Abdu'l-Baha, the son of Persia, it is mentioned that at the time that Abdu'l-Baha traveled to the United States, the scientists in the United States thought that the women's brain is much smaller than men's brain. And I don't want to actually add more to it because there's a bit more to this. And I'm not comfortable saying that because it's very racist. So in I can't remember who wrote that, but it was very strange for some Americans who came from that scientific view, the idea that Abdu'l-Baha talked about equality between men and women, and the fact that if the possibility of education is there only for one kid, it has to go to women. So that was such a beautiful. I don't remember who wrote that paper, but that was in that same book as well. Do you remember that?
I don't know who wrote that either, because I don't know if I read all of the originals in English. That one I may not have read that one. But there are a lot of these kinds of attitudes. When in the 1870s, they began to open women's colleges in New England. Mount Holyoke was 1837, but the others like Wellesley and such were after the Civil War. And there was a lot of fear that if women studied a lot, that they would go crazy. And so these women's colleges always would hire a doctor, and the doctor would be someone who would oversee the young women's exercise and their opportunities to breathe fresh air and to get out of their dormitory and play sports. And it was felt that this was essential for the balance of women's brains so they wouldn't go crazy from all their studying. And we listen to things like that today and we just sort of laugh, but these were the kinds of crazy things people believed, you know. Crazy things. I could go on about crazy things that people believed about women, but we won't do that tonight.
Thank you.
Have
Thank
to
you.
come back, Robert.
Now, some of them are coming back, actually, with recently, what did the Pentagon decided to take 2 black men and 2 white women off the list of people who were going to be promoted with no apparent reason.
Wow. Wow. Thank you,
Well,
Rob. Appreciate it. Joan, if you wish, you can add your name so I can add it to our mailing list. I don't know who invited you, but you're always more than welcome. I'll get the last question from Mr. Cook, and then we'll go for 10 minutes of devotions, please. Mr. Cook, please go ahead. Yes.
Thank you very much. I'd like to take the opportunity to indulge Robert to share his wisdom. I read in the program's note that they were asked to sing a hymn when they left the first group of, the song Nearer to Thee, My God.
Nearer, my God, to Thee.
Nearer to Thee, my God. Was it just
supposedly
one individual or a group of the programs they were asked to sing the hymn?
I don't know about that story, but I think "Nearer My God to Thee" was supposedly Abdu'l-Baha's favorite hymn, and he had heard Americans sing it before, clearly, but I don't know the story of when pilgrims were singing it to him or when they left pilgrimage or anything like that. I don't remember anything about that.
Okay.
I apologize. I don't always have all these details.
Okay.
He will come back, Mr. Cook. He will definitely come back.
Okay.
If I give him the right date, I'm sure he will come back. Thank you, Mr. Cook. Do you have any more questions?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Is it possible, Rob, is it possible for you to start your with the same prayer, and then Joan? And may I ask, actually, I wanted to welcome a friend of ours who joined us from Andy Karim Ben from Liberia. Would you say a prayer? The third one, I cannot locate you. It's a full page for me. I apologize, and I don't see your face. So, Andy, will you be the third person to say prayer? Vinny is here, and David is here. There are friends who can say prayers. Please feel free. And Gary. Thank you for joining us, Gary. I appreciate it. Robert, please.
Firuz, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I happen to have a little answer to Mr. How do you pronounce his name? Question?
Kiuk? Yeah.
Lua Getzinger sang Nearer My God to Thee for Abdu'l-Baha in Baji.
Oh.
And as Rob said, and he knows, and this man is worth his weight in gold, let me tell you. I don't want to embarrass him, but what Rob Stockman has done for the American Baha'i community is amazing. But anyway, Lua sang this hymn in the presence of Abdu'l-Baha in Baji, and the account notes how much he particularly loved that hymn, and he was very moved when Lua sang it. So deeply moved by her singing. So I thought I would just mention that. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you so much. Mr. Cook, you see? Are you happy now?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Jack. Appreciate it. Robert, please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, it's in the prayer book, this particular prayer in the detachment section, but it's not always on the same page, depending on which edition you have.
We want you to read it, please.
O God, my God, thou art my hope and my beloved, my highest aim and desire. With great humbleness and entire devotion, I pray to thee to make me a minaret of thy love in thy land, a lamp of thy knowledge among thy creatures, and a banner of divine bounty in thy dominion. Number me with such of thy servants as have detached themselves from everything but thee, have sanctified themselves from the transitory things of this world, and have freed themselves from the promptings of the voicers of idle fancies. Let my heart be dilated with joy through the spirit of confirmation from thy kingdom, and brighten my eyes by beholding the hosts of divine assistance descending successively upon me from the kingdom of thine omnipotent glory. Thou art in truth the Almighty, the All-Glorious, the All-Powerful. Abdu'l-Baha.
Blessed are you, gracious God, creator of heaven and earth. We give you thanks and praise in the assembly of your people. You made us in your image. Male and female, you created us. And you give us the gift of life and call us to reflect your faithfulness as we serve one another in the bond of covenant love. Therefore, we raise our voices with all who have served you in every age to proclaim the glory of your name. Holy, holy, holy Lord, God of power and might. Heaven and earth are full of your glory. Hosanna in the highest. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. We give you thanks, Lord our God.
Begin Stockman. Wagoshe bongeo lera sompalas. Yambela baruwe hawo. Atoko ala leva busero. Lera moa lera sompalas. Lera moa lera sompalas.
Gofreti itara wako celestere enego ala miri cholora warano aduwara eba buste roba ya bongo pese adogorowa zeri ogo wera pingo gopui tanane sa weo Ferro vera chara yes ferro mane chabao Bigya bawa na wigodo ina wocho na gode wa meme gisafawa ina gesungwe bani itala ina wochele na maraha ba afrago gofleti itala.
This is a short prayer for assistance. I will say it first in English, and then I will sing it in Russian. Is there any remover of difficulties, save God? Say, praised be God. He is God. All are his servants, and all abide by his bidding. Kto избавляет от трудностей помимо Бога? Скажи, слава Богу. Yes, alluvi, oh, vives, yes, alleluia. Vele.
This is a prayer for John Mitchell. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, I can't hear Farouz.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was muted. I didn't realize. I apologize. Thank you. Thank you so much. David, appreciate it. Thank you. It was very timely. Thank you. Gary, would you like to go after, please?
Yes, I would like to offer this prayer and then the chant, because I know that's what you're going to ask me. This is a prayer for triumph in the cause. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu. He is God, O Lord my God, my well-beloved. These are servants of thine that have heard thy voice, given ear to thy word, and hearkened to thy call. They have believed in thee, witnessed thy wonders, acknowledged thy proof, and testified to thine evidence. They have walked in thy ways, followed thy guidance, discovered thy mysteries, comprehended the secrets of thy books, the verses of thy scrolls, and the tidings of thy epistles and tablets. They have clung to the hem of thy garment, and held fast unto the robe of thy light and grandeur. Their footsteps have been strengthened in thy covenant, and their hearts made firm in thy testament. Lord, do thou kindle in their hearts the flame of thy divine attraction, and grant that the bird of love and understanding may sing within their hearts. Grant that they may be even as potent signs, resplendent standards, and perfect as thy word. Exalt by them thy cause, unfurl thy banners, and publish far and wide thy wonders. Make by them thy word triumphant, and strengthen the loins of thy loved ones. Unloose their tongues to laud thy name, and to inspire them to do thy holy will and pleasure. Illumine their faces in thy kingdom of holiness, and perfect their joy by aiding them to arise for the triumph of thy cause. Lord, feeble are we. Strengthen us to diffuse the fragrances of thy holiness. Pour, enrich us from the treasures of thy divine unity. Naked, clothe us with the robe of thy bounty. Sinful, forgive us our sins by thy grace, thy favor, and thy pardon. Thou art verily the aider, the helper, the gracious, the mighty, the powerful. The glory of glories rest upon them that are fast and firm. Abdu'l-Baha. O God, make me a hollow reed, from which the pith of self hath been blown, that I may become a clear channel, through which thy love may flow to others. O God, make me a hollow reed, from which the pith of self hath been blown, that I may become a clear channel, through which thy love may flow to others.
And
Francis, may I say a prayer, Firuz?
sure, let me see if Andy Karim is still here. Andy Karim from Liberia. I'm sorry, I should have asked you to say a prayer a bit earlier. Probably you left. Sure, Jack, go ahead, please.
I just want to mention that my mother, Joyce McLean, wrote the music to this song, and but the words are from Baha'u'llah. And my mother was taught by her sister Ruth Halstead Kern, who was taught by Ali Kuli Khan. So that was a great privilege for our family. Anyway, this is mother's melody to Baha'u'llah's words. I am the son of wisdom and the ocean of knowledge. I cheer the faint and revive the dead. I am the guiding light that illumineth the way. I am the royal falcon on the arm of the Almighty. I unfold the drooping wings of every broken bird and start it on its flight. I unfold the drooping wings of every broken bird and start it on its flight.
Bonsoir, Gibby. Would you like to say a prayer in French, Gibby?
Okay, yeah, I will.
Gibby is my French-Canadian sister.
Now the whole world knows. Okay. Just a second, sweetie.
No problem.
Okay. All right. Ô Dieu, rafraîchis et réjouis mon esprit. Purifie mon cœur. Éclaire mes facultés. Je remets toutes mes affaires entre tes mains. Tu es mon guide et mon refuge. Je ne veux plus m'abandonner à la tristesse ni au chagrin. Je veux rayonner de joie et de bonheur. Ô Dieu, je ne veux plus me laisser envahir par l'anxiété, ni accabler par les tourments. Je ne veux plus m'appesantir sur les ennuis de la vie. Ô Dieu, tu es plus proche de moi que je ne le suis moi-même. Je me consacre à toi, ô Seigneur. Abdu'l-Baha. Merci.
I don't know how to thank every single one of you who join us almost every week and create this space. This is a space of family and friends, and in a world which is going through such a difficult time, I think gathering together and praying and loving each other is just great. Thank you for making it tonight. Really, really, I don't know how to thank Rob. Rob, I didn't even read your bio well.
Doesn't matter.
I've been watching too much news and life has been very difficult. Hope you'll forgive me. I just wanted to address that formally to you in front of others. Thank you, Robert. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I read the Persian prayer?
Yeah, Furuk Hanum,
Allah Hafa.
Lapa, we almost said goodbye, but sure, we can never say no to a Persian prayer. And I hope this is a little short.
Yes, it's short. It's short.
خیلی بلند نباشه. مرسی.
بله بله.
Appreciate it. Thank.
والله ای پروردگار مهربان، این نفوس ندای ملکوت شنیدند و انوار شمس حقیقت دیدند و در فضای جان فضای محبت پریدند. عاشقان روی تو اند و منجذبان خوی تو و آرزومند کوی تو و متوجه به سوی تو و تشنه جوی تو و مشغول به گفتگوی تو. تویی دهنده و بخشنده و مهربان. عبدالبها عباس.
Bruce, I'd just like to say what a beautiful meeting this has been. I've been very touched by this meeting tonight. It's been wonderful. And Rob, you're terrific.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for organizing. It was very special, and the spirituality of the prayers was just wonderful.
Thank you so much, Furuz Khanum, Mr. Robert, and everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Furuk Jun just recited a very beautiful prayer by Abdu'l-Baha. It was just a magnificent prayer.
Yeah.
Thank you, Furuk Hanum. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Diana, thank you for bringing your children all the way from Belize to here. We hope to see you next week again. Kiss them for me.
Yes,
Okay.
well.
We are very, very proud of them. Andy, are you just arriving now at almost 9:15? Andy, let me see your face. Would you like to say a prayer, Andy? Andy, where are you? Okay, well, Andy, thank you for being
May I
here.
ask you something?
Yes.
Last week, did you have any session?
We had a problem with last week's invitations, and I apologize
No problem.
to whoever did not receive the invitation. I'm very sorry.
It's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Friends, see you next week. Love you all. Joanne, thank you so much for being here. Much, much love. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Khuda
much.
Hafiz, Jack. Khuda Hafiz.
Allah
Wonderful
Akbar.
mom.
Allah. Robert, thank you.
Bye.
Robert,
Thank you,
thank you.
Robert.
Ya
Thank you
Bahala.
for all your sessions.
Robert.
Thank you for everything that you've done. It's been transforming for many of us. We appreciate it so much.
By the way, happy April to everyone.
Yes. Happy
Thank
Navajo.
you.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Every week.
Ya Bahala.
Yeah.
Is
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Yes. Every
Reading
week.
this
Someone
wonderful
asked a
space.
question for Ruth.
I didn't hear you.
Someone asked, was it every week? And the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank Gary. Always correct my mistakes. Always.
You just didn't hear. You didn't hear, so I was your ears for you this time.
I appreciate it very much. Gibby. I love you. Cher, thank you for being here. Cher, love you. Gary, thank you. Thank you for being here.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
I'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Yes. Mr. Kirk, thank you for all your questions. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to Faye. Faye June, thank you for being here.
So much.
Susan
Thank
Khanum,
you.
thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. Paranas Khanum, everyone, thank you. Thank you. Much love to all. See you next week.
See you next week. Thank
See
you.
you next week. Bye.